I have been wanting to sit down and talk with you for the longest time. So I am so delighted that we're finally getting to do it. I feel like we are preaching from the same hymn sheet, but you do it with much better titles on Substack.
I don't think that's true, but I really appreciate that.
Just looking through some of your titles, I was like, these are so good. Your phone isn't going to save the world was one of them. I can't remember what the other ones were. They're just brilliant.
Yeah,
Um,
I liked that one. I was proud of that one.
yeah, exactly. It was so good. It's like, oh yeah, you're right. Um, but we're going to talk today. We're going to see where the conversation takes us.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about your love of the Goodbye Hello Journal, of course, one of the reasons we're here. But also, I just am really enjoying these conversations to hear about the ways that you are designing your life, the ways you are designing how you work, and you particularly have an enormous amount on your plate with all that you do. So we're getting onto that. And we're all on this journey together. There's none of us standing, in that destination of got it all sorted, letting everyone else how they can know how they can get it sorted too. We're constantly a work in progress. And I love that about your writing, that you're, as Brene Brown says, writing from the playing field. But why don't we dive in first and talk about the journal and
Yeah.
why you were like, oh, I'll step forward and talk about the journal. What made you want to dive into this conversation?
So, like you just said, I have a lot on my plate. I take care of patients in the hospital. I have a 4-year-old son. I have a leadership position. I write a blog. I used to have a podcast that's on hold. I do a lot of things, and I think that is similar to you. So when
You
I
definitely do more than me. I do all of that except for being an incredible physician looking after patients. Like I do the stuff you do as side projects as my full time.
But I think that's the point is that, when I started my Substack, it was originally for people in healthcare. And I thought, oh, we have all of the same things, those of us who are not in healthcare, those of us who are. And so it's really evolved for me. But I think that's where the journal comes in, is that I have gotten pretty good through the process of burning out twice, of learning that the way that I used to do things did not work well. And that way was completely self-sacrificing, chasing all these achievements, other people's definition of success. And I think that's really what drew me to you in the first place. I think I first listened to your podcast and then I started reading what you were writing and coming to your group. And I thought, yeah, that's it. And then I was like, I need something. And so I think it's probably the same reason that you made the journal in the first place is you needed a way to do these touch bases for yourself and not only having a physical place to do that, but now having your community of people to sit down with and listen to them, I think is really helpful for me, especially I think we'll probably get into this, but this is the first year I've used it, and it's been the weirdest year since my dad died suddenly last year. And so I think using this journal as a way to remember to take care of myself during this year has been really helpful, as opposed to like my calendar, which says, work a 16-hour shift, take a 4-hour nap, wake up and do a meeting, spend time with my son.
Yeah.
Um, to have a place that's like, hey, remember at the beginning of the year in your grief, you pick the word tend for yourself. And how are you actually doing that? And who are you connecting with? And what is your definition of success? And what are you looking for this year instead of, um, you know, get another leadership title or do something else that somebody else wants you to do? So that was a long-winded answer to
Oh,
say
I
all that.
love it. I love it. And you know what? It's, some other people in having these conversations for this series have been also talking about this. It is acting like an anchor. And it sounds like you're putting into the journal all the things you really want to focus on that have you looking after you. And then, you get caught up in the rush of life, but this brings you back to, hey, remember how, as well as doing all of these things, you also really wanted to do this. And I think also then having that anchor stops us from getting caught up in what society is telling us we should be chasing after when we're actually like, yeah, you know what? I've decided not to go for that because me, myself, and I have decided And we've put it here in this journal as a reminder that actually this year, after all I've been through, is that what I also really need to be doing, in fact, is tending to myself and healing and grieving and doing all the things that support me in that process. So it feels like the journal feels like you've created a sort of sanctuary where you come back to yourself each time you open it up, I guess.
Yeah, I think anchor is the perfect word. That was one of the words that had come to me when I was reflecting on why it's so helpful. It also, it doesn't take away from the fact that I'm still a high achiever who is recovering from all of the trappings of that. It was really helpful that it also coincided with a year where I let go of one of my leadership positions. So now I just have one instead of two that I'm trying to do very poorly. Um, and one of the things I wrote down for the summer as a goal was a slow down summer. I really wanted to have a July and August where I was not hustling. And
Mm.
for academic medicine, that comes at a time of the year where new people are coming. And so my June is very busy, my beginning of July is very busy. And I thought, I want a break after that. And so I think one of the things that was helpful, not only from the journal, but also I think one of the sessions that you led was asking, what do you need to get done in order to make that thing happen? So it's not like you're putting things away and you're not doing them and you're not achieving or living up to all the other expectations that I have in my life. It's more, how could I prepare some of the things so that they are rolling out during that period and I get to be at the lake with my kid, which is way more fun than answering emails.
Yeah. I feel like you are a natural or naturally drawn anyway to what I call the art of life design, which is to go, yeah, exactly. You're nodding. Yeah, it lights you up, right? That like there's the idea of taking that step back and going, well, I'm not just going to accept what I'm told I should do and should live a certain way. I want to get to choose it for myself. And it feels like that comes through in your writing and your work. But I'd love to hear about that because we've never got a chance to sit down. I've been saying to you for ages, I really want you on the podcast to talk about everything that you do and you write about and what you do. But just tell us about, yeah, through the Substack, but through your work as well, what you're trying to show the world in terms of, you can step into the driving seat of your life and create a life that works for you. Are you doing that? I'm just putting words into your mouth, but I feel like you are.
I mean, I think it's like you said at the beginning, we are all in this work trying to be on that path, but none of us are perfect at it, which is why it's so great to have other people, because it's so much easier to tell other people how they should be doing their lives than it is for you to put it into practice in your own life. But you could probably imagine, as a high achiever who picked pediatric intensive care as my specialty, that I like to be in charge of things. I create a lot of, I create every day in my job where we don't know what to do with patients. And I think a lot of people in medicine don't think of that as creativity, but we're doing something that's never been done before.
Yeah.
And I like that. I love teaching. Um, but like a lot of people in helping professions or people who caregive in their homes, it's really easy to lose track of yourself. And I got on the treadmill of achievement and climbing the ladder. And, when I was in training, I was working 90 to 100 hours a week sometimes. And so, of course, you might burn out doing that. But really, it was the second time. There was a few things that happened. I had burnout, the pandemic happened, and then I was pregnant with my son. And it was really the pregnant with my son part that made me think, okay, there are probably things that I could be doing better to take care of myself and also being an example to him. I want to be present in his life. I don't want to be absent. And then when my dad died last year, that was also another wake up call of, okay, we need to be doing things in a way that allows us to take care of ourselves and do all of these other things. And I think that's what I try to teach people is most of the people who gravitate toward my work or yours are not the kind of people who are going to put themselves top of their priority list and never think about anybody else again. Like those
If
are,
those people exist.
I know a few people who might fall under that category, but most of them have personality disorders and they're not the people that we're talking about. Like, it's just not going to happen. I think most of the people in your community are women, so is mine. And these high achieving, caring women are not going to put themselves number one and be there forever. But I think that is the fear, is that starting to prioritize yourself is selfish. So one of the things I try to do is let them know the actual definition of selfish is prioritizing yourself and thinking of yourself above everything else.
Yeah.
So I can waive the guilt for all of you. I think that it's not what we think it is. And then you can't do the other things in your life well if you're not taking care of yourself. And so, as a scientist, first, as I started reading data that shows, with sleep deprivation and with not taking care of yourself and with trying to multitask and being stressed out, your performance and your well being decreases, I was like,
Yeah.
oh no.
Your IQ drops. I mean, this is
Yes.
where I'm just like, that just needs to be the headline
Yep.
across all ways of working, because everyone is working in a way, or most people are working in a way that gets them into that stressed out zone where, hello, your IQ drops. You can't
Yep.
access the parts of the brain where all the brilliant problem solving and creativity happen. But people have not got that memo.
No.
It's
It's
wild.
it's not the cultural narrative. And we
No.
live in two different countries and it's the same. I think
Yeah.
a lot of different places don't have this as an understanding. And unfortunately, we don't live in cultures where that is prioritized.
Yeah.
And um, I think we still live in places where you are taught that you need to get everything done and do more. And all of the time saving things that we learn are just so you can even add more things. And I have been so helped by the work of Oliver Berkman and him getting you to finally see that we're all finite human beings who will never achieve everything that we want to do. I thought, oh no, that's true. But then, like he says, it makes it so much easier once you've accepted it as a fact to say, well, there will just be things that I want to do that I won't get to do. And so what really matters to me, and that's really the life design part, is what actually matters to me and what are my values and goals and what do I want to achieve, whether that's, what legacy do I want to leave?
Yeah.
And those are the types of things that I think about now. And when I talk to people going into healthcare, that's the questions I ask them because some of them are sad that they've chosen healthcare. And I think, you could still have a career that is satisfying to you, but it will probably look different than people who are a couple of decades older than me. And so,
Mm.
what do you want your career to look like? What do you want your life to look like? How do you want to make an impact? Do you want to spend time with your family? And I think this generation behind me is better at that question than I ever was, which is good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's some of what I do.
So I mean, again, we really do preach from the same hymn
Yeah.
sheet. It's amazing. And that, what you're saying there, exactly that people think it's about making yourself the top priority. And I literally say this over and over again. It's not about making you the top priority above everything else. It's making you and your happiness and well-being a priority alongside everything else. And I'm curious, where do you think this, because it feels so deep rooted, this belief that it is selfish to even spend half a second asking ourselves what we need, attending to our needs at all? It's like it feels like it goes so against the grain. Where do you think that comes from? Where do you see that coming from?
I mean, because of my background, I think I see it in two places. I think it's all over the culture around us, especially for women, that you should be giving everything of yourself all of the time. One of the best compliments that people think they can pay to a woman is she's so selfless. And I hate that. I think it's terrible. I don't want to be completely selfless, as in without a self. I want to be a person
Yeah.
and I want to give of myself to other people, which is why I do the work that I do. And that brings me to healthcare, which, I'm a coach, I do group coaching sessions, and we self-select for people who are self-sacrificing and hardworking, and then you're rewarded for it. I think
Mhm.
healthcare rewards you in terms of reimbursement and accolades if you can not drink water, not go to the bathroom. I talked to a surgeon the other day, female surgeon, who was talking about how she had a 8 hour long case and how she doesn't have breakfast before that. She has some protein in a smoothie, and then she doesn't drink water because she doesn't want to have to go to the bathroom during her 8 hour case.
But that's wild because she's a woman of
Wild.
medicine. She
Yep.
must know like the huge implications of being that dehydrated.
Oh, we know about it.
Yeah.
It's I think part of it is, part of the work that I do as a wellness leader in my organization is to try to push back against the culture that shapes things like that. And also to remind people that it's, we always think that we can't do these things. Like we couldn't take a break for 3 minutes to go do something. In my job in the ICU, people think it's an emergency all the time. And the thing that I promise everybody is that life is not always an emergency, even in the ICU. It just feels like one because we're caught up in that stress cycle all of the time, and everything makes us feel like we need to rush. And so when I feel like I'm rushing, that's really a sign to me that I need to slow down and to evaluate, okay, what is happening right now? Because the other thing is, just like the trying to multitask and doing all that, rushing and stress make your cognition worse, and
Yeah.
you don't think the way that you're supposed to, and you
Yeah.
make bad decisions when you're rushing.
Yeah.
And like my job is super high stakes, and so I always try to remind myself, even when there's an emergency, sometimes I need a microsecond to take a breath. And I think that's why, mindfulness and meditation and these check-ins with myself have become such a priority, is because I've started to realize that it's like being a mental athlete doing this work every
Oh,
day.
yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
you have to be doing the reps to take care of yourself. And they don't have to be long things. Like you don't have to meditate for an hour or 2 hours. I think we try to start with, 30 seconds, a
Yeah.
minute, up to 5 minutes. And one of the things I always tell my clients and people I work with who hate it is 5 minutes is less than 1% of your day. And so if you can't find 5 minutes for yourself somewhere, I don't think it's going to get better for you, unfortunately. And so part of what we do, and I think part of what you do in the journal, is how could you find 5 minutes to start with for yourself
Yeah.
in order to start to put yourself on that priority list? And the things I always warn people about is, once you start doing that and you see that it feels better, like you'll want more of it. You'll never get to that point where you're superseding everybody else, but you will want more than 5 minutes. And that's, after years and years of doing this, that's where I'm at, is I definitely need more than 5 minutes. But if that's all I have, that's what I'll take.
Yeah. So I would love to kind of dig more into this. So two of my biggest heroes in the world of managing your energy, which is obviously my other journal, Time to Thrive, are, oh, I've forgotten their names now. What are they called? What are they called? Oh my goodness. Where's Tony Schwartz and Jim Lower? There they are. Found the book of my thing. So you probably come across, you must know them well over there.
Yep.
People know them less over here. And they're all about energy management. And they have in there the Power of Full Engagement book. They say at the top, I've got a really old copy, and it says, this comes with the full corporate athlete manual. And I was just like, but you know what? And it's so funny and it's so corporate and cheesy. But what I love about how they teach us about being human and how to keep our energy, different energy zones topped up so that we can really be performing at our best, our most productive. But where I'm coming from, that's all well and good. I want it to feel really good.
Yeah.
I want, that's where I'm coming from. But I love this way that they look at it, because they used to work with tennis champions, that they look at it like in the same way as how they used to train athletes. And I do think, particularly when you've got work that's like yours, which is super high stakes, loads of us think our work is really important. We're terrified by all sorts of things, deadlines. Yours actually is. So your level of how you look after yourself, it is for me like talking to someone who runs ultra marathons, on a daily basis, basically, in terms of what you do. So I would love to know, what would you say are some of the tools that you have learned have really helped you, like you say, to be working in such a high stakes environment day after day, long hours? That thing of like, if I'm rushing, I need to take a step back. But what would you say are some of the key tools that help you to stay, as much as possible, recognizing you're human, you're never going to be perfect, but aiming for that, what that optimum level feels like? Let's start with that. How does it feel like on a day when you're in that good place? What does that feel like? What are the signs that you're, in flow, or however you'd like to describe it?
So that's a great question. You know, some of what I do and I think contributes to this sort of flow state is what I do before I go to the hospital. For years and years now, I have woken up early, and it's earlier than some medical specialties and later than others. So I'm not a surgeon, so I'm not in the hospital at 4, but I am there by 6:30, 6:40. And so I wake up in the morning and I have my cup of coffee and I either meditate or listen to a podcast or do something to get myself in that headspace. And I find if I, on the way to work, can't listen to a knowledge-based podcast, it's just a sign to me that maybe my mental energy is cluttered. Like, I don't have as much reserve as I usually do, getting back to energy management like you're talking about. And so instead of forcing myself to do that, I think, okay, what would be more helpful right now? And usually that's music, but sometimes it's silence because my workplace is very loud. My home is very loud because I have a 4-year-old um, who luckily is not usually awake at that hour of the morning, but sometimes. And so I do that first, and that allows me to really take stock of, okay, how am I doing? There's a cardiac anesthesiologist who's also a coach, Sasha Shilcutt, who calls this practice the check your pulse practice. So it's like when you wake up in the morning, think about how you slept last night. What's your energy level? And then set 3 goals for yourself. And these goals are not like the goals that we usually set for ourselves as high achievers. This is like, have water, eat your lunch with a knife and fork. That's one of my favorite pieces of advice from another
No.
physician. That is a goal that I try to do because turns out when you're eating with a knife and
Yeah.
fork or a spoon or a sandwich or something, your hands are busy and then you can't be on the computer doing this. And so even if you just do that for 10 minutes, like those are the levels of goals that she wants you
Yeah.
to set for yourself. And so I've been doing that for like the last 7 years, which is super helpful. And so then when I'm in the unit and I'm doing things, we have a pretty predictable structure unless there is an emergency. And so I put things next to myself that are helpful. So I always have coffee, but then I try to cut myself off at a certain point and do water. There's some cool evidence that actually taking a cold drink of water or ice water helps calm your stress response through the nerves that it activates. And so if I feel like I'm getting stressed while I'm doing my morning, we call them rounds, checking on patients and talking about them, I'll have a drink of water. And then I always have a snack in my pocket because I'm one of those people who gets hangry.
Oh, yeah.
And and I don't apologize for it anymore.
No.
Um, I put something in there with protein so that once I feel myself starting to get angry or like frustrated, I think, oh, this is probably a good sign. It's time for my snack. Like it's not related to the other people, it's completely related to me.
Mhm.
Um, and then, when I'm at a good place, I'm able to it just feels lighter. And I think that definition is everybody knows what that feels like in themselves. It's It doesn't feel like that swirl of whatever chaos and stress feel like for you. It feels like expansive, I guess is the best
Yeah.
word. And
Like I can do this.
yeah,
And I'm doing it. I'm doing this, rather than like, go
yeah,
away.
yeah. And one of people ask me when I feel like I'm in flow at work, and it when you are working with a team of people and you're the leader, but you're just all doing it together, there's this swirl of very positive energy. And you don't necessarily feel it while you're doing it. But I think the thing I try to do now, whether it's, I get that from having a conversation like this with you, or at work, or teaching somebody something, or having a good patient outcome. I actually try to hold on to it for a minute and feel it,
Mm.
because it's so easy for us to let that energy slip away into the next moment, and completely lose track of whatever gave you that feeling. So whether it was the conversation, it was teaching, it was like that's the thing that lights you up, and you can have more of a satisfying life, or you can have more of a life you love by adding in little moments like that, whatever that is.
Mm. You seem, which is kind of unexpected from a physician. And I say this because I have a very good friend who is a doctor here in the UK. And she was just like, I mean, we all exist from the neck up. There's no sense, like no sensation. We are completely disconnected from our bodies. And it is encouraged that we all,
Yep.
certainly when she was training 20 years ago, she was like, we didn't learn. She said, we're not, and it's interesting you say a wellness leader. She's like, make no mistake that we're not in the business of wellness. We are in the business of fixing things when they go wrong. So no, we have no idea how to look after ourselves. And so I'm really curious, how were you seem very embodied, like also very connected with your energy, with your checking in, you're noticing your behaviors. Were you always like this? Or is
Oh
this
no.
something you have learned?
Oh no, I'm exactly like your friend. I was pre-programmed that way. We are, as she said, rewarded to be that. Getting back to that surgeon I was talking about, you get accolades the fewer breaks you take, all of these things. The culture is changing a little bit, and I think it's happening from down here. I'm in that middle, like elder millennial zone where I was raised with those people who did that, and then also now, it's my life exploded. That was the best way to put it. Is when I was in training, I had an episode of depression and burnout, and um, I needed to do something differently. And so I probably should have gone to therapy a long time before I did. And I finally started going to therapy and processing all of the traumas that I see at my job often,
Yeah.
and stuff that had happened earlier in my life. And I think then I started doing yoga and like listening more to people who do like somatic work. And I thought, oh yeah, I was exactly what the and writer Maggie Smith calls, she likes to think of it as a plant on a plant stand, like your head is the plant and then your body's the plant
Well, my
stand.
friend, that same doctor friend she called herself a brain in a jar.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Like, just there's no life beneath
No.
here. I don't even know what it is.
No, and so let's see. I think it's been 10 years since that depression event. And then it's been several years, since 5.5, almost 6 years, since I had my second episode of burnout. And so it was really since that second episode when I got into my career and kept doing all the things that I had still been doing in training, that I started to learn, like, oh, we should probably do this differently. And it has not required me not functioning at a high level or not doing my job. Like, I'm trying to figure out how I can do my job in the best way possible without completely sacrificing myself. And if
Yes.
at some point I have to completely sacrifice myself to do it, I'll leave that job. But I've been happy that I have not had to. And I think that's what I try to teach other people is, I work with a lot of physicians who have the same, well, this is how I am. And often I just ask, well, how's that going for you? Like,
Yeah.
we're ha- we're having this conversation now where it seems like you told me that you have burnout. How is this current way of living going for you? And they're like, oh. And so I asked one of my clients who was really burnt out one time. She was a leader and she's in primary care, and they're, whether you're in the UK or here, they are very overworked and stressed. And I said, "What is your current approach costing you?" And her answer was, "My sanity."
Yeah.
And then we just sat there for a while as she let the weight of that sink into her. And we started with 5 minutes. I said, "What would it look like for you to find 5 minutes for yourself during your day?" And she figured out that she had the key literally on her key ring to her 5 minutes a day. At her lunch breaks, she was getting interrupted all the time by the staff members in the office, and she learned that she had the key to the conference room in the basement of their practice on her key ring because she was the practice leader. And she's like, "You know what? I'm gonna go down there 5 minutes a day." And I said, "Well, what are you gonna do that's not work?" And she said, "I'm gonna read." So she started reading for 5 minutes, and then she started reading for longer and going for walks. And then she told all the people in her life, including the people in the office, like, "I just need 10 to 15 minutes for these reasons." And it turns out, just as you and I both expected, all those people are very happy to give you your 10 to 15 minutes. It's just that we have made it up in our heads, and we've been conditioned to think, "I don't wanna impose on those other people, they have so much else going on, they're gonna hate me," they're whatever the judgment is. And last time I checked, she's still doing something at lunch for herself that is not work.
Yeah. And it's just what I find, it's particularly with people who feel like I have so much going on. I can't and I won't stop, because I think the fear is sometimes if you stop, that like everything is gonna, like, you could just unravel and that will be it. So I think sometimes it's like, if I stop running the wheels, then the wheels will come off and then we're in real trouble. I was speaking to a client once who had just so much going on. She worked actually for the NHS here in the UK. She had loads on her plate, and I got her to take 2 minutes. I said, "What can you do?" She said, "You know what? I can do 2 minutes. I can do 2 minutes to start my day. I can step outside my front door with my cup of tea and just be still for 2 minutes." And what happened in that tiny crack in her incredibly busy, high pressured life was that in those 2 minutes, she said to me, "You know what I started doing was going, what do I need today?"
Mm,
So in that 2-minute tiny crack into out of all the chaos and everything she had going on, she was able to connect with herself, just ask herself, what do I need today? And she started to find ways to give herself what she needed. And I talk about this and you talk about this in super simple ways. We're not asking people to rehaul their lives unless they wish to. Like, there's so much that you can get from those tiny, having the snack in
yeah,
your pocket, having that water there, discovering that actually really ice cold water can calm your stress levels down and wake you up. And those tiny pockets of time can actually make a huge difference. But it's sort of making that crack in the window to then start to come back to yourself.
yeah. I think that's so important, and it gets to the point of, we have such a misconception about stress management and time off that, we can only make a difference if we have so much time off. And it's so true that we need real scheduled breaks away from work, away from everything. I'm not saying that we don't, but I think we also, even when we have breaks, need daily practices that keep us going through our days. And they might look different on different days. It looks different for me. I'm working from home today. Here's my backyard. Um, it's much less stressful here from my home than it is working in the ICU, but I still have to check in with myself, and so it's these little micro moments. I just call it active stress management, which is not, it's now out there because I started saying it, but the active part is just us choosing to think about our stress level, to check in points during our day. And so for people who are clinical, or even anybody, the beginning of the day, the middle, and the end sort of are natural points where things might be going on for us. And so to do that, either check your pulse practice or that 2 minute, just what do I need right now? How are things going? And that can help you move forward and keeps you from getting depleted. And I think that practice is really what has kept me from having a full on burnout again, is I'm very intentional about, all right, how am I doing? Oh, not great. Like what could I do to be like 1% better?
Well, it's the check-in points. Now I get why you love the journals so much,
Yeah.
because it is the ultimate,
Yeah.
it really kind of adds to that check-in process that you already know really works for you in a sort of macro way, and you're doing it on a day-to-day basis. But it
Yeah.
also makes me think of like the athletes on the playing field, that, and or the footballers on the playing field, or whatever sport you're playing, that you come off and you have that session with your coach, and you look at and you talk about the game and how it's going and what needs to change, and then you get back on the playing field. Like, you don't just go on for days and days and never discuss how it's going, never discuss what's working, what isn't working. And actually, I always think that sports psychology and the world of athletes and sports is so much more advanced in terms of how they have to look after their energy. They
Yeah.
have to look after their stress, because if they're super stressed and they're not in flow, and they've had really poor sleep and they're not drinking water, they are not going to perform well, and that's all they care about. So of course they've had to learn like how to actually understand this human body. But in the rest of the world of work, we're like, oh no, what human body? We are machines, we are but vessels. That selfless that you talked about really was like, oh my God, it's asking us to literally take out that, just the very reality that we're human,
Yep.
and operate like a machine. Why do you think? Because that absolutely, I mean, it happens, I think, in all parts of the world, certainly where you are, where I am. And I said this in my book Burnt Out. I talked about, how when you are in a caregiving, any form of caregiving, um sort of industry job, that this belief, whether it's teaching, whether it's medicine, whatever it is, this idea that you should be wanting to sacrifice yourself. And again, when I was interviewing lots of people, including this friend of mine for the book, and the friend who's the doctor with the brain in the jar, she was like, oh, 100%. The NHS, certainly when she was being trained 20 years ago, it's not even a sort of subtle message that you should be sacrificing yourself. It is absolutely baked into everything we're taught about how to operate, how to, like, it's all about sacrificing yourself. Where,
Hmm.
and my feeling is it's because originally caregiving roles have always been the roles of women,
Yep.
and the role of women is to always look after the needs of others. And that is what it is to be a good woman, is to look after the needs of others. And that should fulfill us. That alone should be
Yep.
fulfillment enough to make us feel absolutely wonderful. I mean, I'm curious whether you've looked at like where this has come from, and where the roots of this lie.
I think a lot of it is based in gender, like you're saying. It's really the profession is changing. When I was in medical school, it was the first time that medical school had been 50% women and men. And so finally, there are actually, in some places, more women than men in medical school. But looking at, people who are in the middle of their career or even senior to me, still most of those people are men. A lot of the leaders are men. And their understanding of all of the things that go into being a woman, especially if you have children or if you have relatives, whether it's siblings or parents who need your support or both. They don't understand. I had one experience of listening to a leader say they weren't sure they should hire a woman physician because they were worried about her work ethic. And when I drilled down on that, that person said, essentially, that person leaves when their they've handed over their work to somebody else and their shift is over. Like, even if something interesting is happening. And I was like, you mean she's met all of the job requirements and has passed off safely to the next physician who's here. And she has to get home to her two children because her husband is out of town and they have an au pair who has government mandated regulatory hour. Like, what are we talking about with the work ethic part? And then the whole meeting was sort of like so awkward. Um, and then we had a conversation about it afterwards. And I think some of it is, not people trying to have this view. I think some of it is just the way the culture is baked into you, that you don't always see all of the other things that people have. And that's not just a gendered thing. It's, I don't know that that person has kids and other requirements unless I am knowing them as a person,
Okay.
unless I am asking them, and unless we create a culture where they feel comfortable talking to me about that. And so there's still in medicine, I see it a lot where female doctors in training are a lot more comfortable talking to me about those issues than they might be to somebody else. But I'm
Mm.
also happy to say I have, I work in the training space and wellness, and a lot of the people training the next generation of doctors where I am are men who really care about doing it better than the culture has been. And so
Wow.
that is awesome. Like, that's why I like working there. I don't think it's perfect, but we have a lot of people willing to learn. And I think part of it is understanding that, of course, you can't, as one person, be the only person to push back against a culture, because at some point you might be labeled, difficult or a troublemaker or lose your job. And that has repercussions for you and your family. And so at some point you might just give up. But I think it's really teaching people it's okay to do that. And then as the leaders in the organizations, or even if you're not in healthcare, a leader in wherever you are, making it different. I heard a story the other day of a doctor in training who's pregnant, and she fell and dislocated her shoulder. And so she took one day off, and then she was still having really severe pain, but she was supposed to do this like big presentation the next day. And so she was talking to her program director about it and was like, okay, I think I can go, but I still hurt. And I was so proud of the program director because she said, no, like, you're going to take time off. It's
Oh,
unacceptable that you would come and do this, because not only are you a human being carrying a baby, but also you're an example to the people that are coming up behind you. And we're not going to tell them that this is an expected practice. So I think it takes eventually people getting fed up. And I think as I was getting closer to 40, I'm 41 now. But even in my late 30s, I was like, I just don't care about this anymore. Like, I don't care about maintaining this type of environment where I can see around me that it's incredibly dysfunctional and it's not helping anyone. It's not helping us in the workplace. It's not helping us at home. And so I don't have a problem talking out against that. And it's a lot easier now that I, have a leadership position. I am settled in my job. It's much easier for me to be doing that than it is for some of the people. And so those people bring their complaints to me, and we try to figure out how to package it in a way that's professional, but also in a way where they understand like culture doesn't change overnight.
yeah.
But we can help it change over time. And even in the 8 years that I've been in this job, I've seen serious changes.
Have you?
Hmm.
Well, what would you say the biggest changes that you've seen culturally?
So I think, in the ICU, part of the reason I love it is because we have such a great team of people. We have doctors and nurses and respiratory therapists and pharmacists and other health disciplines all working together. And a lot of the people that are going into not just medicine, but the other professional fields are younger. And so they have been brought up in a world that has talked about this more, and where they're taught about emotional literacy, where I'm still like, what? I'm learning that. Please teach me. And so some of their expectation is changing and their need is changing the culture. So one example is when I first got here, um, one of the people in training had a night that was really bad, and he'd had a bad night a couple of days ago, and he just looked like a zombie shell person leaving our sign out in the morning. And I said, does he get like a day off or should someone check on him? And one of the people who was more senior than me said, well, he'll just have to get used to it. And I was like, no, I don't think that's how it goes. We don't do that anymore. That definitely didn't work for me. And so I think the more people who are willing to say that old way of doing things did not work for me, we should do it a different way, and then are willing to try. The nice thing about that person is he didn't want to be the person to do it differently, but he's a high level leader and he's really supportive now of that. And so we have now um, implemented some wellness funds and people talk about what they want to do. And the nurses do monthly, they call it group therapy. It's not totally group therapy, but it is them getting together with a mental health professional and talking about these things regularly. And I mean, that would not have been heard of 5 years ago. And I
Yeah.
think now we really understand that it's important. And maybe that resource is not for everybody, but whether you're in healthcare, whether you're not, the world is a lot to process. And so having regular check-ins, just like you would do going to the gym for your physical health, I think the more we can be honest that mental health is a part of health, it is healthcare to take care of your mental health, the better everyone will be.
Mm. And what do you do to switch off? Because it must be so hard for you naturally to want to switch off, being a
Yes.
being a high achiever and having a lot of things on your mind and having work that is such high stakes. How do you switch off and how do you encourage the people that you work with? What little tricks and tools do you give them of switching? I love that. This is not the same thing, but the knife and fork, eating with a knife and fork, those really simple, keeping your hands busy. It's like, little smart tricks like that. What have you found helps you to engage the brain? So it's not, obviously, I always say it's not actually switching off. We're not going to do like flatline. I mean, it's still stuff going on, but yeah, how do you do it?
Well, this is a work in progress,
Uh-huh.
especially as more of my work is in my house, I think. And one of the things that I love and a value of mine is growth. And so I could easily find myself going from like work on into, oh, I'm going to read this personal development book and I'm going to listen to this podcast and I'll learn something and then I can create this thing. And so sometimes that is helpful and other times it's not what I want to be doing. And so if I am in the hospital, I try as I walk, there's a hallway that goes from where our kind of office, leave our stuff area is out to where we park. And so as I walk out, I try to like note, I am leaving work. And then when I get into my car, I kind of do the reverse of whatever I do on the way to work, which is what would be good for me to listen to or do right now. And so, one of the things that I used to do, especially after a night shift, is my dad lived in a time zone that was 3 hours behind me. And so sometimes it was hard for me to catch up with him in the nighttime because he likes to go to bed early. But I used to call him in the morning on my drive home to connect with him and to hear what he was doing at like 4 o'clock in the morning, where he was at. And usually it was washing the
You would
dishes.
call him at 4 in the morning?
Oh, I always knew he'd be awake. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. My dad was the type of person who my whole life was like up early.
Okay.
He'd be in the kitchen with just the overhead light on, with the radio on the man never owned a dishwasher because he liked hand wash. I think it was like his morning meditation. He'd like look out the window. He would have never described it like that. He was an aircraft mechanic. He would hate that I'm saying this about him. But yeah, I would call him and and it wasn't like I was waking him up, but now it's sort of like, okay, do I call somebody else? And I always think before I call somebody, especially if I've had a long day, as you're want to have either working in the hospital or not, will talking to this person give me energy or drain my energy? There's a list of people who are on the short list who I'm always happy to talk to. One of them is my good friend. We've been friends since we were 3 years old, and talking to her is never stressful. It's always just like picking back up with whatever we were talking about, even if we haven't talked for months. And we did that yesterday on her lunch break, ironically. Um, but I listen to music, I listen to something else that is completely unrelated to like learning or doing.
Mm,
Often it's a food podcast or just a conversation podcast, or, this time of year, like moving into holiday things. But I do something that is not going to keep my brain going.
yeah.
Um, and then when I get home, again, I live in a place where I drive into a garage and I park there. And so before I go into the house, I think, okay, I'm at home. And like it's just giving yourself those reminders that you're shifting away from whatever you were doing before.
Yeah. That transition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I don't have notifications on my phone. And I turned all my emails on my phone, but I turned everything off for notifications. I keep it on silent. I'll use it to play music off of, but I try as much as possible to be off my phone. And that is something that is still a work in progress because it's so easy to just pick it back up and get sucked into whatever the thing is. And that's not really what I want to be doing.
Mm. And what about when you've had like a real full-on day, really stressful day? Maybe it's the same thing. Maybe you pick up a friend, pick up the phone and call a friend, or is there anything that you do to like release that stress and just shake out the kind of the adrenaline and let it go?
Yeah, so there are lots of different ways to reset our nervous system and, turn on the relaxation side of our nervous system. And one of them happens to be crying. It's not my favorite, but in my job, a lot of hard and sad things happen. And one of the things I had to learn was that if you just bottle those things up, like I had been doing when in training, eventually the box that you shove it all down into will explode.
Will explode from the
Yeah,
inside out, which is what
yeah,
happened. Yeah.
yeah, and it happens to everybody, whether you're in healthcare or not. So I
Yeah.
have a um, podcast or a playlist on Spotify called "Songs to Cry To," which hilariously now has 100 followers because many of the nurses at work. And sometimes we'll have a day that's sad, and one of the young nurses will say, "Jill, we need your playlist today,"
Oh my God.
which
Oh,
I absolutely love. And so there's a small lake on the drive home from my house. And especially in the morning, if the sun is coming up this time of year, it's often coming up as I'm driving home. And so I will park next to the lake and I'll either get out or whatever and listen to my playlist. And so I tell people in my workshops and talks, like, if you ever see me crying at this lake, I'm fine. Like I'm just doing something. You don't have to worry about
releasing the emotion, the
just getting
necessary
it out.
emotions of the day.
Yeah, it has taken me a lot of years, which is why my
Wow.
Substack is called Humans Leading, to remember that I'm a human being with
But this is,
emotions.
yeah, but you know what?
Yeah,
As you were talking before, I had the thought of like, isn't it this crazy, but it's radical in what you're doing is that you are reminding people, but particularly people that work in your profession, that it's that we are human beings and that we are encouraged to and trained out of our humanity. And what I mean by that, like being embodied in our bodies, like in
yeah,
being human, and it's sort of trained out of us. You're trying to be as little like a human as possible and as much like a machine as possible, which actually doesn't work at all for us or for the teams that we are around or even for our patients. Like
yeah.
that's not so. Yeah, of course you're humans leading. I just do you ever do rituals? Have you got into doing little rituals?
A little bit. I try because I'm a recovering perfectionist not to put something that's like very prescriptive, but I sort of do little things.
Mm.
And but before I forget, just getting back to the machines thing, one of my favorite things to remind people of is that even machines get scheduled maintenance routinely.
In case those people that do want to remain like a machine, even
Even
they,
they have
yeah.
offline times. And so you must also.
Oh my God, Jillian, you are so brilliant. I knew I was going to love this conversation. I already can't wait to share it will you come back and talk to me again about energy management and dive even
Yes.
deeper into it when I'm talking all about time to thrive? That will be the next thing in
Yep.
the year. But before we do, how do you, I mean, I know you've only done it once, but how did you and how will you enjoy doing, there you go, there she is, doing the Goodbye Hello Journal? Are you good? Do you like to go off and do it in parts? Do you do it in all one go? Like, how do you do
So
it?
last year I envisioned doing it kind of all in one go. And the way that it looked was I wrote on a couple of the pages and then it was like, what happened this year? Or what happened last year? And I was literally like, I wrote, my dad died. So I was like, oh, no, can't do it right now. And so I did pick it back up. Finally in March, my head was getting back to a place. And so I actually went back to the beginning section where those questions were and started digging into them because I think the nice thing about having these prompts is that, the year arbitrarily starts in January. Like
Yeah.
you could start your year from wherever anytime.
Well, I mean, springtime is actually a better time for New
Yep.
Year anyway. So, yeah, it makes sense to do it in March.
And so that, this year I have a little solo getaway planned for myself. Um, to sort of honor the 1 year anniversary of my dad's death, but then also just to have some processing space. I think after
Scheduled
say,
maintenance for the
yeah,
machine.
yeah, and I am a only child hardcore introvert who likes to do all my processing alone, which is why it was so hard to go to therapy and do things in the first place. But I'll do some of the journal then, and then I usually, like for the last 3 or 4 years, have been picking a word of the year. So I'll do something involved with that also. And that will let me start the process. And then I usually quarterly try to get in the habit of checking in with myself. Or when I feel like, wow, I haven't checked in with myself in a long time, that's usually a sign to me that it's probably time, whether it's the time I scheduled or not.
Amazing. Oh my God, Jillian, thank you so much. It's just, I knew I was going to learn so much from you. I've already been learning so much from you over however long we've been connected on Substack, and just your articles and your posts just always speak to me. I'm like kindred spirit, but you're coming from, a really different world. And it's so amazing the work that you're doing. Like, wellness leader in, the world of medicine. It's just, yeah, it's crazy that should be radical, but it is, and we need it on this side as well. So how can people find out about you? How can people connect with you and learn from you and hang out with you online?
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to keep that little snippet just to hype myself up when I need to. But on Substack, I write humans leading, which is just like it sounds, humansleading.substack.com. And then over on Instagram, I'm at life and picu, PICU. And you can find me either of those places.
Amazing. Jillian, thank you so much. What are you going to be doing with the rest of your day?
I'm going to make pie.
What an answer. Is this in preparation for Thanksgiving?
It is. I cooked down some pumpkin yesterday because my dad was a pumpkin pie snob. He refused to use
Oh,
canned pumpkin pie for all of the years of my life. I've never cooked it down myself, and now I have. So I'm gonna make some pie.
oh my goodness. And in honor of your dad as well. I love that. That's amazing. Well, look, sending you so much love and thank you again. This has been amazing.
Yeah, thanks so much.